Hi, and welcome to So Tites Spotlight Live. I'm Tara Swiger. I'm the marketing coordinator here at So Tites, and I'm here with Sue of SookieSews. Welcome, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Sue is one of the first people who posted a video about how to use So Tites in machine embroidery. She actually taught us at So Tites. None of us who works there actually does machine embroidery ourselves, so we love to turn to experts and people who do it to show us how to use it. So I want to say thank you for making that first initial video about that.
Absolutely.
And then since then, you have made many more videos showing all different kinds of projects. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do and where people can find you?
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tara. I'm so excited to be here. I am a huge fan of So Tights. I remember talking to the girls years and years ago, and they had kind of mentioned that they created these little gadgets, and I was just like, I want one. Like, send me something, and I'll like play with it and see what I can do with it. And I just remember them saying, like, well, it's really more for, this fill in the blank, purse making or EPP. And I'm like, well, I mean, I make purses, but machine embroidery is definitely one of my primary projects. There are things that I do. So anyways, yeah, it was really exciting to get a chance to use those. But I have been in the sewing world for my entire career. And I went to college for fashion design and then jumped right into costume design at Busch Gardens, like back in the day. And I've had different careers over the years. I've traveled extensively with different companies. And then I remember my first embroidery machine, though, was when I was in college. My dad bought me an embroidery machine. And that was where my first, like, oh, wow, what's this? And then digitizing, which is taking an image and turning it into machine embroidery, just blew my mind. So I've been doing this a long time. It's so funny. I always base everything on my daughter. She'll be 15 in a couple of, well, like, yeah, I don't know, like a few weeks. And so when I had her, I left corporate, and that's when I officially started my business. Although I've had my business for like 20 years. But yeah, so when I got into the like officially having my business and doing mostly machine embroidery and some sewing and definitely into sergers, I don't know. I love our industry. It's great, right, Tara? I love what we have, our sewing industry.
Yeah, absolutely. The people are always fantastic and willing to share what they know. Which is awesome.
Yeah.
So, did your business start out you were machine embroidering things for people, and has it moved more towards education?
No, it's actually the other way around. So after I left Busch Gardens and I did a couple other I worked on a cruise ship doing costumes, and I started working as a shop manager at the sewing shop. And I remember thinking like, I'm going to sell machines. That's it. That's my focus. I don't know how to sell anything, but I'm going to learn. And I remember my boss, who is still one of my dearest friends, she has a shop out in Fresno, and authorized back and sew, and just her and her husband are amazing people. But I remember her saying like, okay, Sue, I really need you to teach this. And I'm like, I'm not a teacher. I don't even know how to do that. And she says, well, the best way to learn how to do something is to teach it. And I will never forget her words. Veronica told me that. And I was like, okay. And I right then and there discovered that I loved teaching. I'm from a family of teachers too. My father was always in education. So maybe it's natural. I don't know. I do for sure enjoy teaching, but that's where I started off in the home sewing industry. And I worked there for several years, and I was a shop manager. I sold machines, but I also taught. And that's when I really discovered like the machine embroidery was my thing. I got the software. I was really into it. And it was actually in 2004 when I created so 20 years ago. Oh, I'm so old. But 20 years ago is when I created my very first In the Hoop project, which just means that the project is completed all in the embroidery machine. Where's right here, the embroidery machine, the whole thing's done all just with the digital part of it, which completely and still fascinates me. And so that's when I really started my business, selling the embroidery designs. And it's so funny because Nancy's Notions, Nancy Zeman, they were the first company that sold my CDs at the time. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started off.
That is so cool. That is, and it's such a long history in the industry. You do not seem old enough to have been doing it for 20 years, though. That's crazy. Um, so how did you start using So Tites in your machine embroidery?
Well, when the girls sent me the set, they sent me the original like pack, which
Mhm.
has now I can't even remember. I'm looking at if you're wondering where I'm looking at looking at my hanging stand here. But when they sent me the original pack, I think they might have sent me one other full pack, and I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna do a video because at the time I had a series of videos and they were very cheeky. They were called "Does This Notion Really Work?" And I did it kind of as a spin-off of another YouTuber that I really loved. And I thought, I'm just gonna have fun with this. And then what happened is everybody started sending me their notions, hundreds and hundreds of notions. And it was just like, okay, I don't, I'm a single mom. I only have so much time in the day. I have to really manage what it is that I'm going to, dedicate a video to because videos take time. And so I was very selective. And when they had sent me those, I was like, okay, these are really cool. I'm going to show how they can be used with what they're already, saying that they can be used for. But I'm going to say, like, how can I use them? Like, personally, I hand sew, if I have to, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not really a quilter. So I was like, I'm going to figure out how to use these, how I can in my space. And my first thought was like, oh, floating. So when you hoop a stabilizer and then you lay something on top of it, like the little bib right here, and you lay it on top, I don't always want to use a spray adhesive. I get migraines. So when I'm spraying a spray adhesive in a small area, even if it's one that's a better quality, sometimes it just literally goes to my head. But there's other methods. You can pin, you can use glue. There's lots of methods. But I really wanted something that was a no adhesive method. And So Tites were perfect. You could slide the metal piece from the back underneath, slide this underneath, then lay your material down and then snap it into place with the top magnet. It just made sense to me. And that's what I do. I think we were talking about that. I've done hundreds of projects with this method, hundreds. Like every time I do something, if I can avoid using a spray adhesive and if I can avoid putting the whatever it is inside the outside and inside hoop, I will absolutely always try and do that. It's definitely.
Yeah, well, and what you said about spray adhesive makes so much sense about it giving you headaches and wanting to avoid that. And the thing that we hear when machine embroiderers come up to our booth is that the pins also will like cause crinkles and pinches and it won't lay flat always. And so
Good
like it's a real
point. Yeah.
struggle to try to not get it crinkled because then of course the machine embroidery is just gonna like sew those
It's
wrinkles
gonna
in.
do what it's
Yeah.
exactly, the machine's just doing what we're telling it to when it comes to the hooping. So yeah, really good point.
Yeah.
I feel like it works really great. I love it. There's lots of methods. And so Tara, I had just made a series. I've been asked for quite a while to do a series of videos on how to embroider on like blanks. And so I did one on a scarf, which I don't have the scarf because it was a gift to somebody, but how to embroider on a really sheer scarf. And we could probably include the links in the description of where the videos are that they can watch.
Yeah.
But embroidering a really sheer material, like you just said about putting a pin in it, I didn't even want to put a pin in this scarf because it was really nice, good quality, and I was nervous that it was going to just like you pick one little tiny bit and then you get like that that horrible line in your
Yes.
fabric. So I did not want that to happen. So this seemed like, oh, here we go, perfect solution. I definitely didn't want to spray adhesive. The other thing about spray adhesive too is, let's say that you do your spray adhesive, you hoop your stabilizer, you lightly spray, which again, I mean, I still do that for some things, and then you lay your project down. Let's say that it is an eighth of an inch off and you want to like lift it up. Now you got to lift it up and and then you got to reposition it. So like now it may not lay perfectly flat. I don't know. I just feel like this is just a great solution. Why not do it? So yeah, I did the scarf and then I did a bib, another little project. And then this last one was just how to embroider on a towel, something so simple. Like seriously, if you're going to somebody's house, first of all, you should always bring a gift. That's just, fine. That's just like 101, like etiquette. So anytime I go to somebody's home for something, especially if food's involved, I want to give them something as a gift. And that right there, towels, who doesn't use a towel, even if they just put their pot on it? It's like just in the kitchen, they can just lay their frying pan on it. But yeah, so
Yeah.
So tights are a wonderful solution for that.
Awesome. And I know one of the questions we got was, are they, and this kind of relates to the scarf thing, are they going to slide while you're stitching in the machine?
So that's a good question, because these were all those things that I originally thought, like, okay, well, first of all, for me, what's the worst that can happen? That's what, whenever I go into an endeavor, I just think, okay, what's the worst that can happen? What's the best that can happen? Well, the best is we come up with a great solution that we can share with all of our embroidery friends. But the worst is that something slides. But I got to tell you, I've never had anything slide. I've never had the material slide. I've never had the So Tites slide. And so but to the point about like the scarf, I would just maybe adjust the different, weights of magnets. What did you say? Like, how do you like talk about it? Like,
Strengths.
strengths. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
like the yellow here, we can
Yes.
show the yellow magnets are some of our lightest strengths.
Yes.
And so I think this is the one I saw you using on the scarf.
I think this is what I use on here. I don't know if this is going to come up, but yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh, yay. Hey, it worked.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one that I used for the scarf, I think.
And then the originals, which are the turquoise,
Yes.
are kind of medium. And then the purple or the dark blue are the really, really strong ones.
Yeah.
And I think we got a question like, what is the thickest material I can use?
Well, I use towels and I've never had any problems. I trying to think, when I use bath towels, like, and maybe I'll do a video on this, but like really hotel, like nice hotel, not like, Roach Motel, but like nice hotel towels that are really lush, I would probably stick with this size right here.
Yeah.
Because they're bigger than the original. And so there's like one extra magnet. But what I've been doing, like the last couple of videos I did, the actual metal piece, this part is underneath the hoop, touching the bed of the machine. I would probably hoop my stabilizer, lay the towel on, and then because the towel would be so large, I would probably put the So Tites so that they were kind of on the sides as opposed to underneath the project. I could have even done that with this last towel I did, but it didn't need it. So that way, essentially and I do have a video of this somewhere. I'll find it and I'll share it with you. Yeah. But then essentially like your So Tites are kind of around it and they're not touching anything. They're just touching the stabilizer and the towel, we'll say.
Yeah.
That way it's not touching anything. So nothing's going to get attached to it. And so, yeah, to answer the question about the thickness, and I used this size for that. Yeah, that's probably what I'm looking at my others, but that would be it.
Yeah. So, and for everybody who isn't familiar with them, the blue is called HDs, and they're our strongest magnet. They're the magnet that's in the magnums, which are the long yellows that people use to load quilts when they're long arming. So there's the HDs, and then there's also the minis, which are the strongest small one we have. But like you mentioned, they're only 2 magnets, whereas the HDs are 3 magnets. And these come in a machine mix. So if you are like, which ones? There's a machine mix that comes with the original, the HDs and the magnums, so that you could do like a really large project.
You might even use the magnums. I don't have my magnums out here because like I don't really use them very often. I see Creative Appliques mentioned vinyl, leather, clear vinyl, basically where you can't use pins. And she's absolutely right, because that would be even there, even with the towels. I'm not sure I would use the magnums just because like the idea too is to not leave any permanent marks on the towel, right? So if you use something that's maybe too strong, I don't want like an indentation. I always think of like years ago, I worked, when you're working at a store and you have a name tag, and we had the type that had the magnets on it. And I remember I had a really nice blouse that had like a pile to it. And darn it, man, that left a permanent like circle on my house. And so I kind of think of the same way with the So Tites. You wouldn't want to use anything that's really big, like really too hard on that towel. So I would probably stick with the HDs, this one here, because there's like the 3. Yeah. And maybe even go with more of something to surround it. But it's amazing. Like if your viewers watch some of the most recent videos, it's really incredible how powerful they are and how little that you really need to hold the material in place. I mean, we're not working on, like, I guess if you were working on like maybe a big tote bag or something heavier, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned Creative Applique. Dawn is in the comments here. Hi. And if you guys are watching and you have a question, there's a problem with it streaming on Facebook, but I can see y'all are watching on YouTube. So if you go to the live stream, and if you're watching on your phone, you might have to click the little button under the video that says live stream or live chat. Click the little button and ask your question in the chat. We will see it and we will answer it. And if you are watching this later and you leave a comment and you have a question, we will come back in and I will answer the question. And if I don't know the answer, I will get the answer from Sue. So you can just leave a comment and ask any of your questions about using it with machine embroidery or, and we have another questioner we'll talk about in a minute. But I just want to let you all know those comments are open for your questions, and we will answer it now or we will answer it later. But I actually, I keep calling you Sue, and I know you as Sookie Sews. Can you tell us about your nickname?
Yeah, sure. So about 4 or 5 years ago, the nickname was given to me and I loved it. It really was great. And so it's funny though, like, so my name is Susan and nobody calls me that really. I mean, very few people. And it's funny because I can always tell who's known me the longest based on what they call me. So I have some friends that have known me for 20, 25 years, and they call me Susan because that's what I was back then. My family almost always called me Sue or Susie. Ironically, I didn't think about this until recently, but I actually did have somebody when I was in church, like young, who called me Suki. And so, because somebody asked me and I'm like, no one's ever called me that until the past few years. And then I was like, wait, no, I do remember that. So yeah, Suki is a nickname for Susan. It's probably a Southern thing. If anybody, like we were talking about how it's a name that you've probably seen, like it was on Gilmore Girls, and well, if you watch True Blood, it was on there too. But I love the nickname. It was very special to me, and it's kind of in the karaoke world. I like to go sing, and so people in karaoke, they'll be like Sookie. I love it, but it is a special nickname to me. And so the thing though is I have been known as Sue O'Very forever in the industry. And there's a lot of Sues though in the sewing world. There's one Suki. And so when I decided to rebrand, I asked a lot of my mentors in the industry. People have known me a long time. Like, what do you think of this? Do you think this is a smart move? And everybody was like, yeah, go for it. And I'm so glad I did. And I will always keep that as my business name. And when I teach publicly and when I'm even on YouTube, I'm like, hey, I'm Suki, and I love it. And so there's still quite a few people in my life that call me that. And it's special. I love it. And, yeah. And the bee, like everywhere I have my necklace, but you can see my little bee here. It's Suki Bee, and my logo is a bee, and I call my viewers sewing bees. And yeah, so call me Sue.
Yeah, that is so great to hear. I absolutely love it. And you're right. There are so many Sues. I often will get an email from a Sue and have to then go in and like look at the contact information we have saved to see the past emails to figure out
who it is.
Who
am I talking to?
Right. In between Sue's and Sarah's, I'm like always pausing to make sure I'm talking to the right person.
I know. And with Sarah's, I'm always like, I got to make sure I spell it right too, because there's
I know. Yeah. And you're the only Suki Sews, so I love that. So Dawn of Creative Applique in the chat says So Tites are perfect for holding on water soluble stabilizer too. Can you tell me a little more about water soluble stabilizer? Because I've had people mention it to me and I'm always like, I don't know what you're saying.
And as soon as I explain it, you'll probably go like, oh, okay. Actually, in the last 3 videos that I did this really pretty, like, beautiful scarf. I did a bib and I did a towel, and I used water soluble for all 3 of those. And the idea originally, I think that it came out, I mean, it's been out for years. And I mean, when I think of water soluble stabilizer, my go-to is Sulky, just because that was like the first stabilizer I ever used. And it's called Solvy, but every brand has one. In fact, you know what? I meant to say this, and here, I'm going to try and pull this out here real quick. But I wrote, it was 3 or 4 years ago, I published a book, and it's called The Pocket Guide to Stabilizers. So if anybody wants to learn everything there is to know about stabilizers, grab this. I mean, they're super affordable. You can get them on Amazon. We can also include a link if you want to, Tara, later. Yeah. But it is a very thin, clear, water-soluble stabilizer. I think It's ideal for anywhere that you're going to embroider on where you need to have a nice smooth surface. I think of towels immediately. So towels have that pile. And if you just go and start embroidering right on top of it, the stitches will just organically want to sink into, because the embroidery stitches are trying to find the base layer of material. So with your towel, you may have a 1/4 of an inch thick, like even this right here, this pile right here, it's you can kind of see it right here, right over here. You can see the pile of that towel. So the base towel is smooth and flat, but then there's like a little chenille fluff to it. So when you lay that water soluble, that clear over top of it, and it kind of looks like saran wrap or cling wrap, like it just lays over top. Now the embroidery stitches are like, oh, this is where you want us to stitch. And then it lays nice and flat and stitches. And it's just really great. I use it for towels, for sure on knits. And even when I did this bib, I did it with the bib mostly because this isn't just a cotton bib. It's a knit. There's something, I mean, this is actually kind of a cool, it's kind of a cool bib, but inside there's a thicker material that I think is like water resistant. And I was like, oh, there's some thickness to this. There's going to be, if I don't use the water soluble, I feel like it may not lay nice and flat. So it looks like saran wrap. You lay it over top of your primary material, and then the stitches lay nice and flat, and it's great.
So then it like comes off with water. You like wash it away.
Then you peel away whatever doesn't tear away will wash away. And usually, like for example, when I did the bib, I mean, you can see right here too, this bib, and the hoop that I used was much larger. So the bib is truly floating on top of the stabilizer. And then the wash away I laid over the entire thing. The other thing too is when you're embroidering on, like even this right here, when you're embroidering on this, we don't want our presser foot to get caught up on these little ruffles. So when you take and use the wash away stabilizer over the whole thing, yes, it seems like a big complete waste of stabilizer, because I mean, you don't need like maybe like an 8 by 5 inch piece of stabilizer to cover it, but it may be a little waste of the stabilizer there, but it's preventing your materials from getting caught in the foot, moving around. And so yeah, I think that little bit of waste, because you can, to answer your question, then when you're all finished, you tear it away. Make sure you hold your embroidery stitches always when you're ripping stabilizer away, but you tear away the stabilizer, and then whatever's left will wash away. You can get in there and like pull apart with some tweezers too, but it washes away.
Yeah. So you mentioned something a few times that I think is the primary thing people, when they see the So Tites, they think of, and that's that you're floating.
Yeah.
Meaning you don't have to have the right size frame, is that what you call it? Frame, for every project you do. You can have one big hooper frame and float smaller projects inside of it using So Tites.
Yeah, that's a good point. I feel like depends on the machine you have, obviously. Some people have the multi-needle machines that are upright and there's plenty of space underneath that like a tote bag could hang. I personally don't have those anymore. I had them in the past, but I have just the domestic. So like the one that's right here, this is a Burnett B79. It's a great little machine. It's very affordable. You can get them from a local dealer. They're just really great machines, and I feel like it's kind of like a little workhorse, but it only comes with certain sizes. It doesn't have big giant hoops. I think the largest is 6 by 10. So there's like a little one, then there's a medium, and there's large. And I want to say that I used the larger hoop to do this, because to your point, now I have my hoop stabilized, or I have the stabilizer inside the hoop, and let's just say that's 6 by 10. Let's just say that you've got that much room, but then my embroidery is only maybe 2 by 4. So it's got like all the stabilizer. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, it's such a waste of stabilizer. Let me tell you, stabilizer is the least expensive thing that we're going to put into our embroidery projects. Thread and the machine itself. I feel like it's just a very little sacrifice, and there's ways to use up the pieces of stabilizer. But yeah, you're going to have this big area to lay your project down. So I mean, yeah, I have to say, if I can, I'll use a larger hoop, because I'll have more real estate to make sure everything's laying nice and flat and secure. So
Yeah, and it's not gonna like you're not worried about the bib, for example, like crumpling on the sides or getting wrinkled or
yeah,
having to like get it in because that's what people have told me at the booth is especially with something like a towel, getting it into the frame and getting it smooth. If you
yeah.
have to put the frame around the whole project, or if it's a knit, it could stretch, and the So Tites just let you like lay
Yeah. I
it.
had a friend I worked with, his name's Alan, and we worked together for years at the store that was local. And I remember one time, because I was still like really like, oh, I'm going to hoop it. And that means that the towel, the stabilizer, everything's going to be inside the hoop. Because quite honestly, that's how we were all taught 20, 25 years ago. That's just what
Yeah,
we did. And then I remember the first time I saw him, he was the one that showed me. He's like, oh, well, I don't hoop anything. I'm like, what? Tell me what you, I don't understand. Tell me everything, because
yeah,
I am a forever learner. I never want to stop learning. And so if I see somebody doing something that I don't understand, I'm like, hold the boat, like tell me what you're doing, like explain it to me. And so yeah, he was the one that first showed me how to float. And
mhm,
I do cover that in my book too, like what is floating. And
mhm,
it's just simply that you're going to hoop the stabilizer and you will float the project on top of it, whether you use So Tites or an
mhm.
adhesive. I'm really not a big fan of using straight pins. I just feel like there's too much at risk. The pin could get caught on something. I mean, there are times you can use it, but So
Mhm.
Tites, they solve that problem. And
Yeah,
especially to Dawn's point that she mentioned about vinyl and cork, leather, those leave holes. And
right,
so you don't want a hole in your project.
right.
You want it to look good. But
Yeah.
yeah, floating is a great method. I can't say I do it always because there's times where it's not appropriate, but and
Yeah,
sometimes it's just easier to hoop it. But
yeah,
yeah, I'm a huge. I think when the So Tites came out and I saw that, like, I'm going to use them for this. I don't know what anyone else is going to do with them, but this is what I'm going to do with them. I
right,
remember thinking like, okay, I think they just solved a problem that they didn't even know was a problem.
right,
And that's
for
the
sure.
best kind of product. If you can invent something that solves a problem, but then a problem you didn't know was there,
Right,
I think that's just brilliant.
yeah,
I'm constantly impressed by the So Tight gals.
yeah,
Constantly.
yeah, they're
I have a
pretty
love
amazing.
affair with their products. Like I just
Yeah, yeah, so Mary asks, "How do you know which So Tites to get?"
Okay, so that's a good question. Like, so what So Tights to get or what So Tights to use? If it's what So Tights
Oh,
to get, I would probably begin with like the beginner pack. You'll
mhm.
have to tell me, Tara, which ones are in there. But I think the dot, which I do love the dot. Tell me which one is it? Is it?
Yeah, well, we've actually so I think you probably got the original mix,
Yeah, like
which had a dot, but now we've split it up because we realized people need them for different things. So there's the machine mix, and we'll link it below, and it's got the original,
okay.
the blue one you say you use for bigger projects, the HD, and the Magnum, and then there's
Oh, okay.
the hand mix, which has the dot, the mini, which is the purple one that's really strong, and the
Yes.
yellow one, the light bar. And that light bar is what you used on your scarf project.
So
Um,
tell me what's in that one again. So the yellow bar, the
purple
purple.
bar, which is much stronger, and then the
Yeah.
dot, which is a single magnet that's our strongest magnet.
Then I would probably say if I was starting out for machine embroidery and I could only buy one thing, you're saying these three right here,
Yep.
I'd
Yep.
probably buy that.
Okay.
That would be what I would probably buy. And that way the you get the opportunity to try them out, see how they work, do one project, see
Hmm.
what you liked about them, what you think you could add to your collection. Because So Tights, in my opinion, they're an investment, and it's not like a consumable. Stabilize. That's what I say. Like you have to buy if you if you're in the machine embroidery world. Our cost is stabilizer, needles, and thread. They break, they run out. It's a consumable. But once you buy So Tights, you have them forever. So I don't want to hear anybody complain about the price or whatever, because like it's like you're
Yeah.
investing into it. Like buy
Right.
them, use them, and save yourself the trouble and the time. You will. I promise that you'll love them. They're great. But yeah, that would be the collection that I would probably get this, and I would probably buy two. But
Yeah, well, so they come in a 3-pack or a 12-pack, and the
oh,
12-pack
problem
is what
solved.
machine embroideries get because there's 4 of each one, so you
That's
can make a frame, of purple or yellow around your thing if you get the 12-pack.
I love that. And then the other day when I did the bib, I did the dot
Mhm,
here, but then this was gonna for sure the ruffle. I was like, okay, I'm worried
mhm.
about this ruffle. So I think I have to go back and look. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I used this one
Yeah.
on the sides to hold it down. But I like that. So yeah, that would be what I would get. So tell Mary that that would be the set I would probably get. And then now you'll know what you like, and then you can add to your collection and
Yeah.
move around. And because you all have so many, there's so many fun ones.
Yeah, well, and we've expanded it as people have given us more, like as you've given us feedback for how you use it with machine embroidery. We're trying to, make it easy for people to make that decision based on. Also, when you go to the So Tites website, at the top in the bar it says So Tites 4,
I
and then
love that.
you can pick your craft. So if you're a long arm quilter, a hand piecer, a bag maker, a machine embroiderer, we've like put the ones together that people who do that craft recommend.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's very smart because it helps the consumer like narrow it down. Okay, well this is the box I can check right now. And then too, I mean, obviously they're interchangeable because I machine embroidery and I'm really big into using my serger, which is right here, but it's covered up. But that's a whole nother conversation. And I do use the So Tites for projects that I'm doing with my serger. It's different though. I tend to use probably these two the most
Yeah,
because it's something that may be a little thicker material and I kind of just want them to stay where they need to. But yeah, I
yeah.
do use it. And then for sewing too.
We'll have to have you back in a couple months to talk about how you use them with your serger too.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and so we'll wrap up there. If you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments. We'll come back and answer those later. I want to let you all know that we are doing Spotlight live conversations every month with different makers across the different ways that people use So Tites. So normal quilters. Last time we had a English paper piecer talk about how she uses the palette, and I'll make sure to link to
Yeah.
that so you can see that one. And so we have scheduled a garment sewist and a bag maker. So if you want to make sure you get the alerts or the notifications when we have a new artist maker on to talk with us, make sure you're signed up at SewTites.com/subscribe. And I want to thank you, Suki, for joining me and sharing your wealth of knowledge about machine embroidery with us and with the whole audience. So thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on here.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a great day, and
Yep.
we will see you next month. Bye.